Hey guys, welcome to this video. We'll go over all of the settings in Apex Legends in order to get the best performance and the most kills. And if I don't say anything, just do whatever you feel like. If you're only interested in a specific section of the video, feel free to use the links in the description to jump to it. Let's go. I'm gonna start with the gameplay. Interact prompt style. There are two interact prompt styles that you can set it to. There's the compact and the default. By default, you get this big chunky prompts whenever your mouse is over a weapon or whatever, and with compact they're a lot smaller and they take up less space on your screen, and they're also somewhat translucent so you can see through them. I just recently switched to compact because I had some situations where if I'm having a fight and I'm just above a weapon, I can't really see the enemy through the default one if it's too close to the corner I'm trying to hug. So I think you should go to compact. Button hints, I leave this one on. It tells you if you're close to a door or a zipline or whatever. It gives you an on-screen indication if you're close enough to actually use it. Crosshair damage feedback. By default, this is set to the X, which I think is shit. I'm not gonna lie, it's bad. It's bad, guys. Like, it takes up so much space in the middle of your screen. It really makes it much harder than it has to be to track targets. There's also like X with an icon. I don't know what the hell that is. Anyway, you should turn it off. The damage numbers are enough of an indicator whether you hit your shots or not. You have 4 settings for the damage numbers. You should set them to stacking. This will present the information in the clearest possible way. It will combine as much as it can the numbers of the damage you're dealing. So if, for example, you half clip someone, you will know exactly how much damage you did to them without performing any math wizardry. Okay, so ping opacity, I have my set to default. You can switch it to faded. I know I'm a bit inconsistent, but I prefer the default. Like, I want to see those pings. I want to know where they are. But with the faded one, you can sort of see through the ping. So if you're having trouble with the pings and you find them too annoying, switch to faded. Obituaries, I just have that one on. Minimap rotation is off for me. If you come from Call of Duty or another game where the map rotation is actually turned on, you might switch it on. If you're like me and you get a better sense of direction from like northwest, stuff like that, keep it off. Weapon auto cycle on empty, that simply means that if you try to shoot with an empty weapon, the game will try to switch to a weapon that actually has ammo. Auto sprint is off. Double tap sprint is off. The reason is obvious. This gives you better control of your movement, so use it, especially now with Sierra in the game. You want to know when to sprint, when to walk, and when to just stay still. Jetpack control, this is extremely important, guys. Like, jetpack control is extremely important if you intend on running Valkyrie. There are 2 options. By default, it's set to toggle, which I've heard is fine for controller, but for PC it's shit. It's very bad. Like, the jetpack should be set on hold. This is what enables you to do the crazier maneuvers with Valkyrie, so I definitely recommend that you switch it to hold. Toggle just gets you stuck in a flight mode, and by the time you get out of it, the battle might already be over for you. Okay, incoming damage feedback. I have that set to the default, which is 3D, which I think is the best one. This will give you small indicators of the direction you're taking damage from. It's very useful, especially in some situations where it's hard to make out whether the enemies are on the left or the right. This is helpful. Taking damage closest dead box or crafting menu. Guys, I cannot stress this enough. Turn this off. Have you seen No Cocoa Puffs or Candiru or me or whoever do an armor swap while they're being shot at? If this is turned on, at the second you take damage, you'll be taken out of the inventory. So this way, you tried to get an armor swap, you got the disadvantage from trying to take an armor swap, but you didn't actually get the fresh armor. I really hate this, so I definitely think everyone should have it turned off. Hop up, pop up, this is off. Like, guys, come on. Unless you're at like your first 5 levels of the game, you don't really need an explanation about what hop-ups do. You don't need the pop-up, it just takes real estate on your screen and whatever. But it's not the end of the world if you prefer to have it turned on. Streamer mode, if you're feeling like a sweaty Twitch Wraith, you can turn that on, and basically there won't be any names in the kill feed, or you can possibly like anonymize even the person who kills you. This is meant, I think, to deter stream snipers, but whatever. I don't use it. Anonymous makes you anonymous, basically. So like, it would make you anonymous in the kill feed, and whenever people will only be able to discern your nickname if they look at your death box. Okay, usage sharing, I don't know what that is. I'll just leave it like that. Performance display, I find this extremely helpful. It takes a bit of real estate in the upper right corner of the screen, but it really helps me to know when I'm dropping frames, when the game is not behaving normally. I want to know why. I want to know if my PC is the issue, or if the servers are the issue, know, I just want to know. It's not gonna help me that much in that situation, but like it's gonna give you a better understanding of what you need to work on in case you have like the extra money or whatever.
Oh yeah, don't ask me for money.
Colorblind mode. I actually waited recording this video. Like there was supposed to be the option to change the color of your reticles, but for whatever reason it's still off. The only way to change the red dot in the middle of your classics and your bruisers and so on is this. Like many pro players have it set to this. This is actually meant for people with different types of color blindness. I can't deal with the weird colors, so I just switch it off. I stick to the default. Maybe when they introduce the option to actually, you know, change the color of the reticle itself, maybe that's when I'll have a look into it. I have my subtitles set to off. If you have like trouble making out which legend is speaking, this can be sort of useful, especially if you're new to the game and you don't know them just by the way they sound. Like if you see anything on the subtitles, or if you're hard of hearing, this can be helpful. The subtitle size doesn't matter. Enable accessible. Okay, I don't use any of these, but you know, they're here for a reason. If you need them, feel free to use them. Mouse sensitivity. Okay, the most important aspect of mouse sensitivity is to understand that each player plays with a different effective DPI. EDPI. EDPI is basically the mouse sensitivity multiplied by your actual hardware sensitivity of the mouse you're using. My mouse sensitivity is set at 1.7. My DPI is 800. So my EDPI is 1360. Okay, I think that each player should discover their own sensitivity, but if you're looking for a guiding light, basically, if your EDPI is over 2000, it's probably too much, and if it's under 1000, it's probably too insensitive. Basically, this is like the Goldilocks zone where most players play, like between 1000 and 2000 EDPI. There are of course outliers and everything. Mouse acceleration, I have my turned off. Mouse invert, I have my turned off. Lighting effects, I have it turned on, I guess. I don't know what this does. Let's have a look in here. I don't know if you know this, but by default, Apex slightly tweaks your sensitivity depending on your optics. Basically, if you're using the hipfire, this is the actual sensitivity you're getting. When you ADS, depending on the optic, your mouse actually gets slowed down compared to your regular sensitivity. I've been really debating whether to change it up. People say that if you switch this to 1.3, your sensitivity while aiming down sight will match your hipfire sensitivity. To me, in general, it sounds like a good idea, but I'm already super used to it being the way it is. So I guess I will have to just check it and try it and see how it works soon. But those are your basically two options, like stick to the regular, or if you want to match everything to your hipfire, go for 1.3. You can also do it per optic. Like if you want to do it for a specific site, maybe like this is what I should do. Like I should increase the speed for the 3x. Whenever I play with a 3x with the R301 mostly, I feel like it moves way too fucking slow. Anyway, my controls are basically the defaults. I think it's not a bad idea to stick to them. Several things, you don't need to do it, but I think it's a good idea to do it. You need to bind your survival item. This is basically your heat shields, your mobile respawn beacons. The way you want to do it is pick a key that's easy to use but doesn't encumber you. For example, I've set it to my 5th mouse key. That's what I use, but you can use it whatever. Another thing that I recommend you bind as soon as you start playing Apex is your move key to your mouse wheel up and your jump key to your mouse wheel down. This is what enables every player to have access to the more advanced movement techniques in Apex, while just doing this won't automatically make you a tap strafing, bunny hopping god, wall jumping into fights. It's what will allow you to get there if you invest the time to develop those skills. I think those tricks are not always extremely useful. I think they're mostly useful if you're playing a extremely mobile legend like Octane or Pathfinder, but you know, in general it's a good idea to invest some time into learning them, at least the basics. Like you can definitely use the jump slide, you should be using it all the time, and for me, like ever since I have it bound to my mouse, like I've been having a much easier time. Like just before I had this, I would use space so much, and now I think like 60-70% of the time I'm actually jumping with my mouse, and maybe like 40 or 30% I'm jumping with space. I think for better players it's gonna be even a higher percentage for the mouse jumping. The rest of it is just the regular, I know there are some weirdos out there. I know that some of you like to, I don't know, go forward with the 2 key or the F7 or whatever, but I don't need to tell you how to do that. You're gonna set up the keyboard yourself. Like I in general, I try to stick as close as I can to the defaults with like small tweaks here and there. I don't know anything about controllers. I used to use a controller when I was in university playing Call of Duty on my Xbox, but like before that I was a PC gamer, and after that I was a PC gamer, so I have very limited experience playing on controller, and even more limited experience playing on controller for FPS games. So I will try to find a good video explaining what to do, and I will link it right in the corner and also in the description. Okay, video, let's go. So basically what you want to do is you definitely want to be running the game in full screen. This really impacts the performance quite a lot. Even if you're streaming, still run full screen. There's no reason not to use it. It is possible to run the game in some weird resolutions. I myself like to stick to the regular aspect ratio. Like, I get that there's possibly some advantage to playing stretched, but I just like things looking good, Why am I playing this game if it's looking like shit? Anyway, I have the resolution set to the regular one as well. The brightness, okay, this is a bit subjective. I have it set at 50. Field of view. Now, here is an important one. In general, if you're playing on PC, your FOV will start here. I'm not sure about console. I think they play by default with 70. I've done some research. There's going to be a link to the video, but there are very, very, very few top players that play with an FOV under 100. I think the main reason for that is that just the FOV makes it easier to have a better understanding of the battlefield, and I think increasing your field of view, actually giving you that slight fisheye lens effect, actually makes it slightly easier to track targets, especially like when they're moving very fast. I have my set to the maximum. There is a workaround to go all the way to 120, but I think that's too much for now. And yeah, you can try 110, you can try 106. If that feels uncomfortable, go to 100. Don't feel bad about going to 90. Shiv FPS is Apex god, and he's sticking to 90 as far as I know. Now, here's an interesting one. The FOV ability scaling. Several legends in the game, actually just Bloodhound and Octane as far as I know, change your field of view when you use their abilities. When you use the Bloodhound ulti or when you stim with Octane, your FOV switches to 120. So this means that whatever you have memorized in terms of tracking, in terms of hand movement with your mouse and whatever, like, it's gonna be slightly off target. I think this matters more if you're like me and you switch around legends often, but if you already have hundreds or thousands of hours on Octane or on Bloodhound, this is what it used to be like. Before this setting existed, it was always enabled. So maybe don't change it. But if you are a new player, or if you like to switch around between main legends, I think disabling it will be the best option for you. Like, I think for most people, it should be disabled, because changing FOV in the middle of a fight is sort of like changing your sensitivity in the middle of a fight. And I think the only situation where you wouldn't disable it is like if you're so used to it that it doesn't make sense for you. VSync. I have it at disabled. The game looks a bit sharper and I think it's the best for performance. NVIDIA Reflex is quite good. I use it. Disable it if you need the PC resources. Consider also using Enable plus Boost if you need the resources. Guys, I need to make this clear. I'm running this game on an RTX 3080. So, I have my settings set up in such a way as to optimize the enjoyment of the game for myself and for the viewers. But I used to play this game on an old ass Razer Blade laptop. It was with the GTX 2060 or 1080. I'm not sure. It was old. Never mind. Anyway, so I'll show you how the settings look if you want to optimize performance. Like, basically, if you want to optimize performance, you disable everything. You disable anti-aliasing. This is gonna give you some tearing, but that doesn't matter. You're gonna set your texture streaming budget to very low or low. Remember, these are the settings if your system really needs to squeeze out those frames. You're gonna turn off texture filtering. You should disable ambient occlusion quality. You should disable sun shadow coverage, sun shadow detail. Spot shadow detail is disabled as well. Volumetric lighting, dynamic spot shadows, modo detail should be too low. FX detail should be too low. Basically, like, everything low or disabled. That's how you would run the game if you don't have a great PC. I'm lucky enough to have a good PC, so I've been quite generous with most of those settings. I'm not sure if I even need to give it insane. I think very high is probably better, but whatever. I want the game to look pretty. But still, even then, I have a lot of the lighting options on low or on disabled, because the more light you add into the game, the harder it is to spot enemies, especially when they're far off. And like one issue, especially when you play on King's Canyon and some areas and World's Edge, is that if you lower the model detail, you will be able to see through some rocks and cracks and stuff like that better compared to if you have it set on high. But you know, each of us makes their own choices. So yeah, let's go to the audio. It's extremely important to have your audio set up in the right way. Like you can see here that my audio is quite loud. If you play the game only occasionally, I think you will enjoy the music in the lobby, you enjoy it in the game, but I've listened to each of those tracks so many times that I don't really want to hear them again. Or like I would turn them on occasionally, but I like running some music in the background when I play, like my own music. If it's on Twitch or for YouTube, I usually try to go DMCA free, and if it's for myself, I just pop some good old Falcon music and, you know, just enjoy that. Anyway, sound in background. Actually, this should be set on. This means that if you're out of the window, you'll still hear the game. I have my dialogue set lower compared to the sound effects volume, because you really want to hear enemy steps, like jump pads, like every ability, every gun, every action in Apex has a sound associated with it. So basically, if your audio is just right, if you crank it up without like blowing out your ears or anything, it's pretty much like a wall hack. So try to use it. I know sometimes it's broken, I know sometimes it's not working, but when it's working, it's indispensable in the amount of information it's gonna give you. So use it when you can. Sound effects volume should be set to the maximum, and you know, set the master volume depending on your preferred strength. I just wanted to show you how to change your server. You can either hit tab or just scroll over here. So basically, like, you have an option to switch to wherever. Ooh la la, maybe I can't change to Sydney. Okay. Basically, you want your ping to be as low as possible. The game does a very good job of picking whichever server is the best one for you, but occasionally you might have a reason you want to change servers. Maybe, for example, if you're playing with a friend who's from, like right now, I'm based in Europe, so you know, the European locations have the best ping. But if, for example, I want to play with a friend who's in New York, I might go to New York. Like, the ping is gonna be substantial. Like, anything over 100 ping, you can feel it, especially like when you go around corners, you might get shot when on your screen you're already behind the wall, you might still be out of cover on there and they can shoot you. Stuff like that happens when you go above 100 ping. But like, anything under 50 ping is playable, and everything up to like 80 is still very good. So in case, for example, sometimes one of the servers will go down, and if it says you cannot connect, like for example, if the server disconnects in the middle of a game, one thing I've found to work sometimes is, for example, I'll be connected to Frankfurt 1, maybe the server got overloaded or whatever, and I'll just switch to Frankfurt 2, and I will be able to come back into the game. That's like one situation for changing servers. Another situation is, for example, if you just experience packet loss or whatever in your server, you know, you can try a different one. But these servers, the servers you change, they mostly apply for your pub games. They don't really apply for ranked. In ranked, especially at higher rank, the lobbies get merged, so you might get a bit short-shafted sometimes. Like, for example, the lobby might be hosted in a server that's not optimal for you, because it's like the best compromise between all of the players in the server. I've had that situation a few times. It's not great, but you know. Okay, let's set up the starting options. What you want to do is you want to go into the details of the game. It's pretty similar on Steam. You go to game properties, you go to advanced launch settings, and there it is. What I'm using is that I've activated development mode, which basically removes the starting cinematic of the game, so it's much faster to get back into a game. For example, if you get DDoS or just the server craps out. And I've set an FPS max of 170. The reason for that is that the game does experience some performance issues once it passes that threshold. Even if your computer can handle it, just the game is not optimized to run at those settings. Okay, now let's have a look at my config file. The way to access your config file is you go to saved games, then you click on respawn, then you click on Apex, then you click on local, right click on the video config. Right now I've set mine to read only. You open it up, you don't need to touch anything. The only thing that you do want to touch is your CSM enabled. If you want to play like me, I've just recently converted to playing with no shadows. The game does look a bit more weird, but it's much easier to pick out enemies, and I think it's okay. I'm still giving it a test, so I don't know if I'll keep it in the long term, but if you don't mind losing a bit of visual acuity and gaining a bit in terms of performance and, you know, being able to see enemies easier, you should switch your CSM enable to 0. This will turn off pretty much all of the shadows in the game. After you finish doing that, you do need to change your properties to read only, because otherwise the game will override it. So yeah, those are the options, and that's how you set them up. Good luck in your fights, guys. I believe in you.